Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Meredith Phillips. I'm a writer, reader, and bunny mama. So today I wanted to just chat a little bit about sharing your work. You get to a point as a writer where you kind of need to share what you've been working on if you want to get any better at it, right? But making the choice to send your work to someone else can be really nerve-wracking. I know it was for me. I've been sharing my work with a critique group since February of this year, and it's been really great for me. And I wanted to share a little bit about how I came to the conclusion that I needed to share my work with some people, and maybe some questions and some things to consider if you're also looking for a critique group or you're looking for feedback in some manner on your work. So like I've mentioned in some previous videos, I've been writing for about 4.5 years at this point. I've read a bunch of craft books. I've listened to a ton of advice here on YouTube from different author tubers, and there were some things that I was able to do on my own to improve my writing skill. However, by the end of last year, 2019, I'd gotten to the point where I felt like I really needed to get some outside input on my writing so that I could kind of know, like, am I on the right track with this? Is this decent in some manner? Or should I just scrap everything and not try doing this again in any capacity? My original plan had been to try to find some writing friends and writing buddies on social media platforms, but I fortunately was introduced to a writing group at a NaNoWriMo meeting last November, and I've been working with them since February, and it's been a really positive experience for me. But there's some things to consider if you also have gotten to the point where you feel like maybe you're ready to share your work. So the first question I would ask yourself, and this is maybe the most important thing on this list, is to ask yourself, why do you want to share your work? If your main reason, and you got to be honest with yourself, in your heart of hearts, you might want to just get affirmation from other people. You might just want to hear encouragement. You might just want to have people tell you that you're doing a great job. You might just want that kind of response. That's one thing to consider. Or you might want to be sharing your work because you genuinely need constructive criticism and critique on your work so that you can get better and improve the craft. Now, I'm not necessarily saying one is right and one is wrong. I think there are different avenues to go down depending on what your ultimate desire is for sharing your work. If you're really just interested in getting likes and getting encouragement and really not constructive feedback on how to get better, and you just really want to have people clap for you, then posting snippets and things like that on Instagram or Twitter is probably going to be the place to get that. If people post a snippet from their book on Instagram or something like that, people are going to give you a double tap and like it. They're going to leave a comment with heart eyes. They're going to say stuff like that. I feel like most of the time when I see people posting snippets, the comments there are just very encouraging and positive, which is great. If you need that kind of encouragement to keep going, then that's a great place to get that. If, however, you are looking for constructive criticism, that's when you really need to find a writing partner or a critique group who can help point out the things that you're doing right and the things that you need to improve. If you're looking for a critique group to join, there's some other things that you need to consider when you're looking around or trying to connect with different people. One of the things that I would highly recommend is trying to get into a group or make friends with different people who are kind of generally on the same level as you as a writer. If everyone in the group, or if the other person is at a really high level of writing talent and you don't know anything about story structure, there's not really very much that you're going to be able to help them with, and they're probably going to get frustrated helping you with really basic stuff that you still don't know. So trying to find a group where your skill levels are kind of on the same plane. You don't all have to be equal, but you do need to all be able to help each other. Part of being in a critique group means that you're going to be giving feedback to other people on their work. It's not just people giving you feedback and you giving nothing back. So you need to be able to critique their work in a way that's going to be helpful for them. The other thing I would suggest is making sure that the group or the person that you're trying to interact with to get critiques is going to give you truly constructive criticism. Constructive criticism is not just pointing out all the things you're doing wrong, nor is it just saying, oh, you're doing such a good job and it's perfect. You're gonna have a little bit of both. A constructive critique is going to mention things that you did really well and that were enjoyable to read, and it's gonna point out things that could use improvement and potentially tips on how to improve it. You want to be sure that the group that you're working with is going to be giving that kind of feedback. Because when you go to one extreme or the other, people who just cheerlead you or people who only knock you down, neither one of those is going to be particularly helpful for you. The other important thing to try to figure out as you're getting to know new people and potential critique partners is how the other people will react if you choose not to take their advice. One thing about a critique group is you don't have to take the advice that they give you. That is just their opinion about what you should or shouldn't do in your writing. And they may be right and they may be wrong. So you have to know how to filter that. You also need to make sure that if you decide, you know what, I'm not going to do what they suggested, you need to make sure that they are okay with that. You don't want to join a group or get involved with another person who's insisting that you change it exactly like they're telling you to. Nor should you expect that any critique you give back to them is going to be immediately taken and implemented. Two last things to kind of consider and think through before you start looking for a group or another person to be a critique partner, and that is this. I would suggest making a list maybe of 2 or 3, 4 things that you think you do really well in your writing. Maybe you think you're excellent at describing the scenery. Maybe you think that your dialogue is really snappy and witty. Whatever it might be, kind of make a list of the things you think you're really, really good at. Now consider taking one of your writing pieces to a critique group and having the group or another person point out that your dialogue wasn't very smooth, it was a little bit cheesy, or some other sort of negative critique of it. And then check your attitude. How is that making you feel? And then think about how having those elements that you thought were really amazing, think about how it's going to feel if someone says, ooh, this isn't so great. I think our first response a lot of times, and it's I think very natural, is to be defensive. Well, they didn't understand or they didn't read it right. And maybe that's true some of the time, but a lot of times it's not. They just didn't particularly like the way you did something. So think about your response. How are you going to respond to critiques that maybe really hurt a little bit if they're critiquing something that you thought was really good? If you're prone to being really defensive and reactive to stuff like that, you're gonna have to hone that and draw it back a little bit. Just because somebody says, hey, I thought your dialogue here was a little weak, it doesn't mean that it was, and it doesn't mean you have to change it, but you do need to be open to the fact that maybe the things you think are really good aren't as good as you think they are, or at least aren't able to be improved. With all that said, I think the last thing I want to mention is that your attitude is really important. If you go into a meeting thinking that you're going to be the best writer, or if you go into a meeting thinking you're going to be the weakest writer, make sure your attitude is generally positive and make sure you are open to the critiques that you're going to receive from that other person or from the group. Defensiveness is not a good look for anyone in those situations. So make sure your attitude is overall respectful. So those are some of the sort of lessons, tips and tricks, things to consider that I've been learning over the last year or so. Let me know in the comments, are you in a critique group? Do you have a critique partner? Do you have people you send your work to? How do you get feedback on your work? What kind of feedback are you generally looking for? Let me know all of that in the comments below. If you yourself are looking for a person to swap work with, to critique, go ahead and mention that in the comments too. And if you see someone looking for a partner, and maybe you can connect off of YouTube and be critique partners. That is all I have for you today. If you liked this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, click the subscribe button. I post videos on Tuesdays and Fridays. You can also find me over at Instagram at Meredith Phillips Writes. Thank you so much for watching. Bye. Sorry if you notice my eyes directing off behind the camera a little bit, but I have a sticky pad down in my office to catch bugs and stuff, and there's a roach on it right now. It is stuck, and I thought it was dead, but it's moved in the last like 10 minutes. So I'm a little distracted by it because I'm pretty sure it can't get off the sticky pad, but also don't like roaches. So anyway, hope that's not too distracting. Ugh, I'm just looking, ooh, so gross. I need to put up something so I can't see it while I'm doing this, or I'm just gonna be looking at it like the whole time. Hold on. Ew. These things are so nasty. I hate them so much. Ugh. Okay. I have a box in front of it now. I'm a big dork. Okay, probably. Okay, anyway. I've listened to a ton of advice. What the heck was that? Sorry to future editing me having to edit out my silence walls. I post buttons on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Nope.